Thing I just shared with you is a Google Drive folder that I believe has some things in it. So now that I've shared it with you, I'm going to check for myself. Oh, yes. So what I put in there is I put the Jamboards we're going to use this evening, and then I put two interesting things to read that you might, if this thing that you just read, this part of DeHane's book that you just read floats your boat. This is more interesting stuff. The first two are about remembering and retrieving memories. And then the last one is a book, but this is just a little summary of a book. It's a really interesting book by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he's actually an economist, a Nobel Prize winning economist, but he has done, he has delved into psychology quite deeply. And this is just a great book if you put it on your summer reading list. Put it on your summer reading list.
So am I right that the Bartlett and the Brewer and Nakamura were also in the cognition course?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Right,
That's
you
why
are.
they look familiar.
That's why they look familiar. And the Bartlett paper was actually written in, I believe, 1932. So, and yet it is still very, a very good representation of remembering, but it's more like a story. It's kind of fun. Anyway, there's that. Okay, so maybe this is who we have today. So maybe we should get started. So that's not what I want. Here's what I want. Oh, one announcement before we really get any further, and that is that the next time we meet a month from now is actually going to be one day less than 4 weeks from now. We need to change that session from a Wednesday to a Tuesday so that I don't have to cut my class short by an hour. I'm now teaching a class on Wednesdays that runs from 2 to 5 Pacific, so 5 to 8 Eastern. So I dismissed my class an hour early today, but I don't want to make a habit of that. So next time we will meet on Tuesday rather than Wednesday, and Sue will change that in the
eWebLife
invitation software and get an email out to folks. So I did want to announce that. Okay. What is in place prior to school? What is in place prior to learning? That's kind of what this whole part 2 is about.
There's a lot. I was really surprised at how much is automatically there.
Yeah.
So as I was reading this, I was reminded of a Radio Lab. You know the public?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sure.
there was a Radio Lab episode called Bat Boy, and I really recommend it because apparently, at least some people who are born blind can develop a kind of vision by clicking, and all of this hardware that's there for creating images allows them to process audio using the imaging part of their brain, and they can kind of see based on just using reflected sound from clicking sounds that they made. It was fascinating, and I really felt that it really I was really reminded of it when I was reading all this stuff.
Didn't they call it like echolocation?
Well, they do that certainly when we're talking about dolphins and bats and things like that. Nobody actually used those words that I remember in the NPR episode, but certainly, yeah, it's a similar kind of idea.
Yeah, I had the parent of a student that I had in my physics class many years ago was blind. He became blind as an adult, but he became blind very gradually. I don't remember the name of the condition, but his vision kind of constricted until he had just a pinpoint of vision and then nothing. But during that period of time when he was adjusting to becoming blind, he learned to do exactly what you just said, basically to echolocate. And he could kind of feel stuff around him. And so he demonstrated it by walking around in the classroom without bumping into anything. And this was a very crowded classroom. You know,
Wow.
30 kids and they're all sitting at tables and they have stuff hanging off the back of their chairs, and yet he could walk around the room and not bump into anything. So I thought that was pretty amazing.
What you described for his vision sounds like Stargardt's disease. It's a genetically linked form of macular degeneration,
Yes, that's exactly what it is. That is
which I
exactly.
know because my mother had it.
Ah, very interesting.
Yes,
Huh.
but you don't need it to have it from both parents. It's passed directly down, and fortunately for me, I don't have it,
Oh,
and
thank God.
therefore I can't pass it to my children. That kind of thing.
Oh, hmm.
So no recessive genes for it.
Um, I mean, you either have this gene or you don't. Like my
Yeah.
brother has it,
Hmm.
but his progression is extremely slow.
Huh.
But my mother's problem was she never agreed to be blind,
I see.
right? And so this person you're describing, he decided he would be blind, right? And then
Huh.
accept everything that comes with that.
Yeah.
And it came to my mother, you know, she stopped, she really lost her vision in her 60s. And
Oh, see, this guy lost it in his teens.
right, so he could, by her, it was just too late for her to make the mental decision to be a blind person.
Hmm. Interesting.
That seems to kind of fit with some stuff I've heard about cochlear implants. My mom was a speech pathologist before she retired and would sometimes what she would do was evaluate like, 6-month-old babies for potentially getting the cochlear implant surgery, which Dehane talked a little bit about. And she's shared with me that it's really controversial in the deaf community to give the young babies
Yes.
cochlear implants because having that experience of hearing from a very young age, I'm guessing because of some of the ways that Dehane talks about it affecting your brain development, really impacts the ways that they then interact with deafness and experience deafness, and it separates them in a lot of ways from people in the deaf community who haven't had a cochlear implant. And so there's this idea that, well, maybe we should wait until they're old enough to consent and make the decision before we put the cochlear implant in. But then because of the way the brain develops, if you wait, it
Right.
is not nearly as effective.
Right. Plasticity, right? You're really plastic at a really early age.
Mhm.
And yeah, that is
My
really
daughter happens to have cochlear implants and did get them quite young when the FDA brought down the age, which I think when she was born, the age was 3 years old, and it came down as she approached 18 months. And just from all the people we worked with, there's a big difference in getting the hearing and exposure to that at a younger age, and speech development, and among other things.
The deaf community is also a really I don't know, fractured community, I guess. In my experience, my sister taught at a school for the deaf and blind in Montana. And she was not deaf herself, and she was somewhat, I don't know, she was just considered different, right? And then there were the kids that were deaf from birth and profoundly deaf, and then there were others that were, that they had, you know, not total deafness. I'm not coming up with the right term, but not, not total hearing loss. And so they tended to hang together depending on their capacity for hearing, or, their degree of hearing loss.
Well, I do know that people in the deaf community really take umbrage at being treated as disabled, having a disability.
Yes.
It's like we're different, but we're not disabled. And that's one of the reasons why some of them seem to resist the cochlear implants. So it's interesting that Jacqueline, did you run into, well, of course, your child at 18 months wasn't going to
No,
give you grief.
yeah, it's really interesting because I'm in Massachusetts, and just meeting other parents around the country, those first care providers really steer you in certain directions. In Massachusetts, in the Boston area, they definitely did not discourage sign language. They did not see any, like, if we did not think that if by teaching sign language that was going to limit her ability to acquire speech. The focus was very much on acquiring language in any form. And so we did use sign, before she was a year old. She had some basic signs. But she actually goes to Rochester Institute of Technology right now, which actually has a National Technical Institute for the Deaf there. So she is with students that have cochlear implants, who are culturally deaf, who are hard of hearing. And there are some, she definitely has met some people who are, kind of see the cochlear implant as a threat to their culture.
Yeah.
But I'd say the grand majority of people, have been receptive to it, and mostly get along. But I think it's just such a connection between language and culture, right? Language is what binds us together. So if you can speak that language, that's, I mean, I could see why they would feel that the implants are a threat. But and I don't want to go into our whole decision making, but
Sure.
it's worked out very well for her. I mean, she presents more of a hard of hearing person than a deaf person. And if you were talking to her right now, it's a good listening environment, you wouldn't know any different that she had a hearing loss unless you could see her implants. When things get noisy, it's harder. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But
Yeah.
she has grown up with some people who had implants, who, like, their providers said, do not do sign language. It will limit her ability to acquire speech. And I don't think that's been true at all.
Well, so that certainly goes with what Dehane says. So when my oldest was in preschool, there was another parent in the preschool who studied language acquisition, and he would study the kids in the daycare. And so I asked him, well, how many languages simultaneously could a toddler acquire? And he said that we don't know of a limit.
Huh.
There's so much language ability in the brain, and the plasticity is so enormous at that age that, like, people in India grow up tri and quadrilingual.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You know what? I think we should break out for a minute, or 5 or 8 minutes, and into some interest groups, and talk about things, and then come back and, maybe quarterback a discussion with each other about some things that just jumped out of this section of the book, which is the hardest section of the book for those of us that are that weren't here last time. And hang in there, because the last part of the book is really going to hit you where you live. But I've picked out a couple of things. I'm going to share my screen right now. Picked out a couple of things that you might feel like talking about. And Erica, or if you're able to do so, will you make me 3 breakout rooms? We're not going to break out yet. I'm going to let people decide.
Yeah,
what
I already have 3 ready. Do you
Okay,
have?
cool.
Yeah.
And we don't assign people, just let them decide what room they want to go to. But in room 1, let's talk about the blank slate assumption is wrong. I think that was a thing that really came across in this section. And in room 2, let's talk about what is learning at the synaptic level. So if you want to dive down into the details, the neurochemistry of learning, I thought that was pretty interesting. And then what is memory anyway? So those are your 3 choices. Choose one of those 3 when Erica opens the breakout rooms. And let's just kind of chew on that a little bit in terms of 2 different things. The implications for instruction, for teaching, and the implications for designing your learning environment. And I believe those are 2 different things. But maybe you think they're the same, but implications for instruction and implications for the design of the learning environment. So questions before we jump into some rooms? No questions.
Can you see the rooms?
I am not seeing rooms.
Marta says she can see them.
Yes,
Really?
I can see them and have the option to join. Along the bottom of my Zoom thing, I had to hit the 3 dots that say more and choose breakout rooms.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
That helped.
Breakout rooms. There we go. Okay.
Join breakout room. So pick a room, 1, 2, or 3.
I named them the topic
Oh.
that you suggested.
Yeah, there's the link to the Jamboard.
But yes, Jeff, we do take time with some underlying core idea so that it has multiple applications, which makes it more transferable.
So you bring up, in our school, physics is last. So all of my students have had chemistry, and not a single one of them can articulate or use the concept of density.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's,
I have the opposite privilege. All my kids have had a basic algebra-based physics class, and I reinforce particle motion, collisions, energy, forces, transfer of energy through these collisions, and they take that with them. But I get to reinforce it because it's necessary. I've
right.
taught the other order. You need the physics to explain chemistry, not the other way around.
So I noticed that nobody wanted to deliberate about the synaptic basis of thought, but that's okay. You know,
We
not
had a
everybody's
little
cup
bit
of
of
tea, right?
minor discussion on it.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit, not a lot.
Okay. What?
Because we were talking about building memories and
Well, yeah.
right. So
And the need to form synaptic connections in order to do that. That neurons actually grow and develop extra connectors that they didn't have before. So yeah.
So does this have any implications for teaching or designing a learning environment? What about that memory stuff?
Well, we did
Yeah,
talk about,
go ahead.
you know, like with modeling, you know, like you come back to, you circle back and cover the content. And we talked about spending time dwelling on something so that you can work it into from your short-term to your long-term memory.
And let the brain do its growth thing it has to do. fascinating to me that the brain's neurons are constantly changing. And I've had some interesting conversations with students since I started reading this book, because it's like they really like to just wait till the last minute because they're 15 and 16 years old and then study at the last minute. And it's never pretty when they do. And I just tell them, I said, look, you guys, your brain actually has to grow neural connections for the learning to stick. So how is your brain going to do that when all you do is cram within a day or two of the test? You
So,
know,
I just had this, made this mental connection to growth mindset. Right?
Yes.
So we know that the brain can develop new connections, that the brain can grow. But I think that if a student doesn't buy into that, it doesn't happen, which is fascinating to me. Because so we this year we took our population of students that have taken physics and we divided them. We now have AP1 for the first time this year. And then we have the students who are not in AP1. And that's like, I have one section of that. It's like teaching a morgue. I have, yeah, you think I'm joking.
No,
again,
I
I
don't.
have all the
No.
kids
I just
have all
never
the
heard
kids
that metaphor before.
who don't, I have all the kids who don't really think that anything they do or I do will improve things. And they just have a completely passive approach, and no amount of enthusiasm or jumping up and down or making explosions or anything I do can get them off that point. And I'm really frustrated by it, because they need to believe that if they do something, things will change. They just don't really believe things will change.
And I think a really important layer of that to keep in mind is kids don't just like show up with low self-efficacy around some subject or with a fixed mindset. Now, especially with many of us teaching high school, by the time they get to our class, yes, they show up that way. But they've had a lot of experiences that have really taught them that putting in the effort is not going to be enough to get you there. There's a lot of social messages where one researcher calls it the effortlessly clever physicist, where so much of our perception of what it means to be a physics person is to be someone who is able to, without breaking a sweat or trying or exerting any kind of effort, be able to figure out these really hard things very, very quickly. And that's a really pervasive social message about what it means to be good at physics. And so then when kids encounter science and it's not that, and it's not that for really good reasons, it can be really hard to set aside that message. And instead they end up taking the message, well, I must not be that effortlessly clever physicist. I must not be a science person because I can't get it right away.
I'm not
when they
naturally
have,
good at it, right?
Yeah, right.
yeah, and when they have years and years of those experiences,
Mhm.
or when they have experiences where there's a class where they really do put in the effort and they really do try, but something about that teacher's approach, something about the kind of effort that they're putting in compared to the kind of effort that actually leads to success in the class, those experiences are telling them that your effort is not going to pay off. And so when you have years and years and years of that, that's when they start to really get that fixed mindset, that low self-efficacy, where they show up to that high school physics class and just sit in silence very passively. And so I think it's really important to keep in mind that it's not just that these kids aren't like broken in some way. They've had experiences that make that a rational response.
so in other words, they learned something.
Right.
Mhm.
It's just the
We have
wrong
to prune
thing.
that. We need to prune those neurons that have that learning stored in them. That's
Yeah.
we need to just.
So in the past, I have done this thing where I think it's in the modeling materials where you have them write a letter to a friend, and where they explain to the friend this research on growth mindset. it's been remarkably ineffective, at least as
Ineffective.
I
Very
implement
interesting.
it.
Ah, interesting.
Well, I think some of what has to happen is they learned this through poor experience. So we need to give them an alternative experience that is coached in the right direction. And I have a broken record in my room of talking about active versus passive learning strategies to the point, and I just happen to have this on my desk. I made a handout for it, and it's in their
Okay.
journals. And it's I just was figuring these things out because of all the various things I've read and experiences in the classroom. You know, it's just accumulation of things I do in my room, and I'm doing this on purpose. Like, describe the model. Don't just, you know, because they can turn it into a set of procedures. They can, but describe it. And debating with people, it's, you know, explaining to somebody, teaching it to somebody, all these things of, you don't, flashcard quizzes, if you're using them as, say, test questions you created that you then share with a friend and you mix them up and answer them and talk about them and debate them. It's like, you have to be active. And by having that set of tools that they know I will keep referring to, and they are actually some of them requirements in the class because I check them, they slowly get the message that you can't just sit passively and do it, but they have to be coached, prodded, what's the word when you bribed with grades and other things to actually attempt some of these things, you know.
So does there
but-
have to be a consequence for not,
well,
for not
if
going there?
once they figure it out, oh, that light bulb doesn't quite ever dim out again.
Mhm.
You know, they may stumble, but I had one of those moments with a kid who is, he bombed an empirical formula, molecular formula question on the test and wanted to talk to me about it. And so we sat down and walked it through, and he was just like, he could do the math. He could do the math, but he was not thinking of the problem. And so we talked about it, and slowly it was like, you have to do this from meaning, or your mind will not put it into good structure. You need to put proper names on things so that you're talking about the whole idea and not just the grams per mole, moles per gram, grams per mole, moles per gram. You know, we keep coming back to those anchoring ideas over and over again. And I watched the light bulb turn on today. He said, you're really good at math, but you are not doing math here. You're doing science. We think from meaning entirely, so do mathematicians, but you know. And it was like, I'm expecting something different going forward because I saw it. He understood. But it took till the end of February to get that message to this really capable kid.
And sometimes it takes even longer. I mean, what is the role of expectations anyway? We let them off the hook by, you know, like just saying, well, you know, it's obvious this kid's not going to do it, you know? Or do we keep having those same expectations? You've been having these expectations of this kid since September. And now finally the thing is happening. The thing, whatever it is that you want to happen, is happening. And what is the role of expectations in changing the way a student engages?
Kathy's son has done some really interesting work on this in middle school math classrooms. She collected a bunch of data in this middle school where the math department was all in on growth mindset. The teachers all talked all the talk. They did all the little exercises to try to teach kids, to give kids that language of growth mindset. And what she found was that in some of these classrooms, the kids internalized basically none of it. They did not have a growth mindset about their math classroom or their math learning. And in other classrooms, it was the opposite. These kids had a really strong growth mindset. And the big difference she found was the moves the teachers made that they didn't consciously connect to growth mindset. Like teachers who allowed retakes, who tended to respond to student questions with more questions. The teachers who really did those things that demonstrated that they had a growth mindset about students learning are the ones where the kids started to adopt that growth mindset. And I'm guessing a lot of folks here already do a lot of those things that she saw as promoting growth mindset in students. But yeah, you can talk about it all you want, but unless you're actually teaching in a way and holding those expectations, at least according to her data, kids aren't going to start thinking like that.
Marta, I'm curious, how prominent grading was in the classroom. Did that have, was that discussed at all? Because
Let's see, I know she talked about allowing retakes. I would have to go back through the article to
that's okay.
remember if she talked about grading elsewhere.
Because I
This
just,
is this the one you just shared?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
By Kathy's son?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think individual expectations are really important. I think actually individual relationships with students are really important. You know, if you think of them as those kids, as opposed to thinking of them as Brenda and Jeff and Beth and Ray and Marta, they know it. They know when they're just one of many, as opposed to, you know, she's talking to me.
Someone you genuinely care about.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though they bug the hell out of you sometimes.
Preach it.
I
Yes.
don't know. Everybody has those students, right? I admit it.
I'm going to tell a little anecdote here that I'm not sure how helpful it will be, but I really balk at this notion, and I try to disabuse my students of the being naturally good at something.
Oh,
You know, and Bill Bradley, who was well, he played basketball at Princeton, was a Rhodes Scholar, became a U.S. Senator, and is just a fantastic human being. Once was told, you have a natural jump shot. He played for the New York Knickerbockers and won 2 NBA championships. He said, you have a natural jump shot. And he said, if you practice 3 hours every day, you'd have a natural jump shot.
Jump shot too.
So I think what we have to say to kids is that nothing great is achieved without effort. And
yes.
you have to do the work. And they get it when they're out on the football field or when they're doing track workouts. They know they can't just slog through it and expect to win something when there's a competition. But somehow it doesn't translate over into the academic world. They think, well, either I'm talented or not. And I think we have to find ways to disabuse students that it's not just natural.
So what about plasticity? I mean, we read a lot about plasticity in this section. Do we tell students?
I want mine back. Can I have it back?
What's that?
I want my plasticity back.
Yeah, I think you still have it, Jeff, or you wouldn't be here right now.
I need more.
I know. Well,
It gets harder
so-
every year.
yeah. No, I mean, that's why we all wear.
You need
meat.
is plasticizers,
Yeah.
What happens, the vinyl starts to get brittle here,
Well, don't you know, in 100 years, they're going to be able to reinstate our plasticity because they will, they'll just figure that out. Somebody that's more plastic than we are, or younger, or both.
well,
But what do you think? Do we tell students about plasticity? Do you think they might believe that they could learn something? If
I'm
we
all for
tell
it.
them?
I do.
I mean, I do too. I talk about plasticity.
I think that I just want to
May
bring
not use
back
that word. Go, I'm
what
sorry.
I just wanted to bring back what Marta said again. There's the what we say, and then there's the implications, right, of the structures that are in place, right, in our institutions that may tell the students something different, right? So I think that's part of the work that education as a whole has to do.
And I think something that at least when I was in the classroom, I always felt like was really powerful in terms of like growth mindset and plasticity was when I'm doing some of those things. Like I built in retakes for all of my assessments. So kids would quiz over a standard, we'd quiz it over it again a week later. And I talked about, I do that because I believe that you can improve and I want to have you have a chance to show that your brains are plastic and you're learning something new. And so you might just need more time for your brain to adapt to this new learning. And I always felt like combining that talk with here's a concrete action that I am taking as your teacher because I believe this seemed to, that pairing seemed to work really well for kids to start to buy in.
Well, what did you have in mind when you posed the question, Colleen, about do we tell our kids about plasticity? What were you thinking?
You know what, what I'm hearing is that a lot of kids think that, you know, like, I'm not a math person, I'm not a physics person. I don't have a natural ability to do that. And we can talk about growth mindset, and I mean, there's all kinds of, buzzwords and catchphrases we could use. But what Dehane says is we recycle our neurons all the time. That's what learning is recycling neurons. They're all in use for something, but when we learn, we put them in use for a specific thing. We organize them, right? And
Yeah.
so would that resonate for kids? Would they realize that, yeah, I'm using my neurons for something?
I mean, I have actually, in advance of reading this book, I have said things like that to my kids. I mean, I teach at a boys' school, so
Right.
they all do sports, or 90% of them do sports. And I have been telling them for years that your brain is like your muscles. You build your muscles by working your muscles. You build your brain by working your brain. It's not fixed. I say that to my students every year. And some students hear me and some students don't.
Well, maybe it's a motivation thing. I remember someone telling me, actually, I remember someone who studied motivation saying that all students are motivated. They're all motivated. They may not be motivated to do the thing you want them to do, but they're all motivated to do something.
Yeah.
And I think
And
some of it too is,
I have a couple of kids who are motivated to be brilliant soccer players. That's what they're interested in.
I think some of it too is kids have a conception of how learning happens and how it's related to natural ability. Well, and like they also come into the physics classroom with a conception that heavy objects fall faster.
Right.
And as a modeler, I know I can't just tell them that's wrong. Everything falls
Right.
at the same rate if you can neglect air resistance. I have to set up situations where they're really challenging with that existing conception and engaging with it and using it as a resource for their learning before they're going to be able to start to think about that like a physicist. I wonder if, because students have so many experiences and so many messages from larger social structures about fixed ability and natural ability and all those things that we really want to combat, I wonder if just telling them has a similar effect to just telling them, nope, everything falls at the same rate.
Right.
So we need a
It's model.
paradigm
They
lab for
own it.
growth mindset.
Yeah. They have a model of thinking and learning. And
Right.
it,
They do.
all models are wrong, but some models are useful. That one's not. That one is not useful.
Right.
Oh, I don't know, this might be an oversimplification, but I've always found like during whiteboarding sessions, there's I was tended to have a greater growth mindset kind of culture, if you will. And I think that the discussions were more open, and the students saw themselves as more plastic and able to change and learn than in higher stakes situations where they felt like they were, being judged by a grade. Like that's kind of where I was going with my earlier thing. And it's just in that environment, I think that students can see themselves doing real learning, as opposed to what we sometimes artificially construct, kind of narrower ways of measuring what they say. Like you said, they're motivated. If we open that up, open that experience up and listen to what they're actually thinking, then they can kind of get themselves on a learning trajectory. Whereas sometimes the way that we phrase things, like I say, in a quiz or a test, is such that it excludes a lot of students from accessing, what the starting point. They can't even get to the starting point. But if we go and listen to where they are, then they can, kind of display some growth.
So we're measuring the wrong thing? Is that what you're saying?
Not the wrong thing. I think it's that, and listen, I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do. But I mean, we all know that when we open those experiences up and we open the whiteboarding
And
sessions
I'm
up,
listening.
we're
What?
shocked at what some of the kids come up with, right? And the discussions that occur. And that's what's going through their brains, right? And right, and that's what they're coming with. And this has always been my kind of thinking anyway. Like, unless we go there, unless we meet them there, then the odds of them engaging and kind of starting on the path of learning is diminished.
No, that's a good point, because I have students who, even at this point in the year, they hesitate to write something on their whiteboard that they're worried will be wrong.
Yes.
Right. And I really try and encourage them to think of the whiteboard as a perfectly great place to make mistakes, the best place to make mistakes. Go ahead and make the mistakes. And, as the year goes on, it gets better and better. But there are still kids, even at this part of time in the year, who are a little bit nervous on starting on a problem because they're worried they're going to write down something that's wrong.
Well, isn't that also a social thing of, like they don't want to look stupid in front of their peers?
Yeah,
How
I
do you,
think that at this point in the year, I think there's less of that. So one of the things that I did after reading the Building Thinking Classrooms is I mounted all my whiteboards vertically. And it has made a classroom that interacts a lot more. So the groups see each other's work, they talk to each other more, and I can see correct ideas migrate around the room without my intervention in a way that I didn't see when they were working with the portable whiteboards on the bench. So, they're less afraid of their peers. But I think that they're still, it is a Catholic school. They're afraid of some global judging going
Right.
on.
Well, actually, as teenagers, they may not be as afraid as you think.
Heidi Carlone has done a lot of work on physics identity, and she's got it's an older article, like 2003, but I think it's super interesting, where she found that girls in particular rejected what was being asked of them in a heavily reformed science classroom, because they had this conception of themselves as good students. Like, that was very much an identity they held. And for them, holding that identity of being a good student meant following directions, meant getting correct answers. These things that are very, very much in conflict with what is asked of students in a reformed classroom. And so it wasn't even just about being wrong in front of peers. It was about, this does not match who I am in school.
Right.
And that made it really challenging for those girls to embrace what it meant to be a physics person in this classroom.
Yeah.
Oh, I have seen that so often, of the good girls, because I have a lot of, as a college prep program, I got a lot of them, and they are very bothered when they can't just sit down and absorb this information and do the right things and get good grades. Now, doesn't mean that they aren't getting good grades, but to push them out of their comfort zone. And the other category is the ones who've been very competent at math without actually having to do problem solving in the real sense of it. They think that's what they need. But anyway, But yeah, you know, female over 60, okay, science, math, and even classical music were all nerdy kinds of things to be participating in. And I felt a lot of social pushback to me pursuing my passions. Not overt, like ostracization necessarily, but just, like shut down the conversation by mentioning something, oh, you're studying chemistry. Oop, crickets.
Yeah. So we're back at the top of the hour. I put the folder of stuff in the link for the folder of the stuff if you want it in the chat again. We don't have to close the room right now because there's nobody using this room after us if we want to continue to chit chat. But if people need to leave, they need to leave. And Erica, I know you're the host of the meeting. If you wanted to leave, you could switch the host to me and I can hang around if people want to continue to talk.
Well, I really
have a lot of
appreciate
stuff to get
having
ready
this
for
book.
teaching tomorrow, so I'm going to sign off. So
Good to see you.
good to see you all. See you in a month.
I want to repeat what David said about thanking you guys for all the work you did, Colleen and Erica and Larry, to put this together, but also for the articles that everybody's put up here. It looks like some really good articles put up here, so thanks for sharing that.
And see, Jeff, you're demonstrating your plasticity by mounting your whiteboards vertically.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Good
Well,
night,
this
all.
is good night.
Good
This
night.
is
Thank
so
you.
directly tied to what we have to do in the classroom.
It is.
And I get dismayed sometimes at colleagues who seem more interested in figuring out what I would call the next new shiny approach in the classroom, rather than focusing on what really constitutes deep learning. We would probably change some of our practices if we understood it. But I know I have a colleague that has such deep fixed mindset of her own self and others that I don't know that she can, for herself, see what needs to change. It's she identifies someone as cheating in her classroom. Well, that person is a cheater. And that's where they are. They're stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't see them that way, and I get them to quit cheating and discover that they have some power over their learning, which is probably where the cheating's coming from in the first place. Right. That kind of thing. But that also translates into how you do your curriculum. If you believe people can grow, then you will put some challenging stuff in front of them.
Right.
If you believe that learning is enough practice until you learn it, then you will just do a lot of practice. It may have some fun stuff in it, but you're just going to do a lot of practice. And that's not that. And then you wonder why they don't actually learn to do the thing that you're trying to teach them.
Yeah.
Brenda,
It's a lot about expectations, isn't it? I really do think that the expectations that you have, that your students know you have of them, makes a real difference. She would not expect this of me if she didn't think I could do it, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part is seeing them in context of a whole human being, right? Living a human life over a span of years. I'm just going to give you an old school example. My mother taught actually at the elementary school that I went to, a Catholic elementary school, 7th and 8th grade. And she would talk about the nuns would judge the kids as they were in the grade that they were teaching them, because to them, they were a fixed 7th grade kid. And my mom would stop and say, wait, this is only one little stage of this kid's development.
Right, it's a snapshot.
What they do as 7th grade does not define them, as who they are and as a human being. God forbid any of us be judged who by who we were in 7th grade, right?
Please
10
no.
years ago.
Yeah, or me as a teacher, yeah. Even when I started working
Right.
at this school,
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
right. I think we've all experienced.
Yeah, I actually had a really touching and also disturbing thank you note from a student this year, very ADD. Okay, but I started talking with her about, you have these challenges, but you're going to have to meet them if you're going to move past them. You know, it doesn't mean they'll go away, but you're going to have to figure out how to adapt and find ways to deal with your particular challenges so you can grow. And just doing these things. And I got a thank you note that said that, thank you, you're the, like, I don't remember her exact words, but essentially, you are among the few who really understand me and treat me like a human being. And it was like, that broke my heart that she felt that there was there's only a very small number of people who were treating her like a human being. People probably don't mean to do it, but it's like, oh, there she is again. Ah, she forgot her work again. Well, of course she didn't turn it in. You know, that message comes through. If it never leaves our mouth, it still comes through in body language and the way we treat the assignments. Like, you really need to get that in, as opposed to, how can I help you get organized so you will?
Right.
Yeah. Or a while back, I had a student had an updated IEP. I'd missed the meeting, and when I get the IEP document, I noticed one of his goals is to ask more questions. And he was phenomenal in my class about asking questions, would ask great ones, asked them really consistently. And when I talked to the kid, like, you know, what's going on with this goal? Like, you seem to be doing great on it in here. You know, are there things that I should be doing to help you work on that? He explained that it wasn't because of my class that was an IEP goal. It was because in all his other classes, he didn't ask questions. But he also told me some pretty unfortunate stories about how questions were received by some of his other teachers, where he was made to feel stupid or feel like an annoyance or a burden or things like that. And yeah, he was being taught that questions are not okay. But he also knew he needed to ask them to be able to learn. And
It's a shame that there's still that old mindset of like we're on the train is rolling, and you have to catch up. Like,
mm-hmm.
We're not here to
Yeah, my way or the highway, huh?
my way or the highway, and it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't. It
I
only
don't
works for a few.
That was so often the case with my students. I felt like there's nothing I can do about what happens to them in other classes, but I can make my class a good place.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully they won't lose faith in education because, in other places, they're made to feel somehow less. But I don't know what to do. And I see it in my grandchild, and and I work on it. I can work on it with her, but I don't know. There's a lot of kids getting bad messages.
Yeah. And I definitely don't want to put it all on teachers that these messages are coming out, because there's teachers in my district who see 180 kids a day, or like a classroom of 40 kids. And when you got 40 kids, some of whom have IEPs, some of who are multilingual learners who are emerging English speakers, and all the kids who don't have some label but still have individual unique needs, it's overwhelming, and teachers are not set up to be able to respond effectively to that in most contexts.
Well, and it's the system to some extent that makes that happen. I mean, it's not bad faith. But there is a certain amount of teaching that is pretty unconscious on the part of the teacher. They are just going there, doing the thing that they have done, day after day, year after year, and not really thinking about how it lands with individual kids. And I don't know how to I don't know how the system addresses that. Does the system address that?
Well, and then you add to it that they're not at school all the time, and there is another culture that is teaching them things about themselves. Parents who either reinforce or degrade their value.
Right.
Or, you know, some adult in their life that may be very difficult and sends degrading messages. You know, do they get enough of the other from other locations that they can override that? Or is it not being overridden by adults around them who may just be being passive with them, where someone else is being aggressive? You still end up with this message that has no counter message. And so it might as well be everybody being really, you know, negative with
Yeah.
them, because they don't have anybody countering this negative message.
Well,
And
maybe they're friends, you know?
there maybe, but sometimes then they pick their friends who are equally not in a good place. But I don't mean to be negative, but it's like there is so much to our development and the environment that we live in, that is family and it's neighborhood and it's school and it's friends and it's, you know, it's
And it's the screwed
cultural
up world we
biases,
live in,
it's all
right?
that. Pardon?
It's the screwed up world we're living in.
We do have one that has difficulty because it's so full of humans.
Hmm.
And so many of those messages are really, really subtle. Like I sometimes, or I've been, for my dissertation, I'm analyzing lots of video from my classroom, and there's moments when it's a little uncomfortable to watch some of that video because my videos of small groups, and there's times when, like, I as the teacher come over to that small group, and seeing the video gives me a lot more context to what was happening. And there's moments where, like, I see how I responded as the teacher with the information I had and doing all that thinking on my feet, and I'm like, I kind of wish I did something a little bit different now that I'm watching this.
I know. I analyzed video of myself, and it was the most painful thing that I did for my dissertation. But you can't take it back, you know? You do
You
the
can't.
best you can with what you have in the
Mhm.
moment. You know, you
Yeah.
can't know the unknowable.
Mhm.
Well, you know, but you can keep where we get those lovely and painful insights, and you know, realize I just kind of cut a kid off. Let's not do that again.
Mhm.
I won't guarantee it, but I'm now mindful because I had that emotional impact of, oh my gosh, did I really do that? And you keep stumbling forward and getting better at it. You know, it's just, it takes time. And I'm reflecting on the almost end of my classroom time. And it's just really interesting what it takes to be good at it. What is it, you know, at least 10 years of constant reflective practice to get just to an area, a level of expertise, but not necessarily the top expertise. Man, there's
Well,
still
no.
things that I was noticing in
They're
my
always
classroom
different.
just
Yeah.
just the last couple of days of, oh, well, I could do different. Oh, well, no, I won't have the kids again. But if I were, I would do this differently.
And I think it takes.
The next
I think
group
it
of
takes.
teachers you're working with, Brenda, you can work with them and impart that knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it takes a certain amount of humility to be open to noticing those moments where, all right, this wasn't a really explicit direct message, but I still sent a message to kids that I don't want to be sending. Yeah, you have to be somewhat humble to notice those things and then be willing to do something about them.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit uncomfortable too,
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, you've used a word a couple times there that is a word that I'm finding myself using more, because it's the word noticing. How important noticing is to learning. Some of this is coming out of the book. Some of it is, you know, being more aware of, you can't find patterns until you actually pay attention to the details.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I've started in on the attention section, but noticing is essential. And if we, as teachers, don't notice our own practice, if we're not reflectively noticing what we do, then we will just keep doing the same things over because like all other human beings, including our
Mhm.
students. How do you change the noticing?
Yeah, well, I think one of the ways you change the noticing is you do a little research in your own classroom. And I think that that experience of doing research in my own classroom fundamentally changed the way I taught afterwards. I just was paying attention to more stuff. There were things that I saw in my data that made me more attentive to, real live teaching and learning. So maybe
Yeah.
all new teachers should be engaged in research. What do you think?
The
think-
EdTPA, which a lot of states use for teacher licensure,
Yeah.
does require student teachers to record some video of themselves teaching and then do some reflective writing on that,
Mhm.
kind of modeled on what you have to do to get national board certification.
Well, that would be a good mid-career thing too.
Yeah,
You
maybe we
know.
should just do it once every 5 years.
Honestly,
You
if you
know.
get national board certification, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I did my initial certification, yeah, I had to record video and then write a whole bunch about it. I think I had to do 2 lessons, and then your certification is good for 5 years.
Mhm.
And one of the things you have to do for they call it maintenance of certification when you renew. But the maintenance of certification includes getting a fresh clip of your teaching and doing some analysis of it again.
Hmm.
So yeah, every 5 years, you got to really delve into about 15 minutes of recording of you teaching.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. That might be something worthwhile. It's possible that a class is using this room now. I don't know. I could have been wrong about that, but I didn't see anything in the Zoom account that said that it was.
Yeah, well, and I need to get going, so I enjoy the conversation. Man, you guys, this is like, I was kind of tired when I got to here and went, do I have the energy? And it's like, you guys have rejuvenated me.
All right.
That was some great conversation tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Success.
Yes, it is. Thank you so
Success.
much.
Guys.
All right.
Thank you. See
Take
you next
care.
month.
Thanks.